I was able to guide a good friend of mine through an LSD experience. Now, nobody taught me this, but since I pray to God and I study under him directly. Above all, I'm a skilled enough mage to understand. I mean, my highest skill set lies in all kinds of healing. I'm very proficient at that in whatever way it flows. I am very, very good at healing. And so I know how to take anything. I could do it with a MDA or MDMA or ecstasy. Mm-hmm. It won't work with like cocaine, alcohol and stuff that because those things are very avoidant in nature and very numbing. So it won't work with that, or like heroin or pills. It won't work with that.
This is Modern Day Hippie. We are your homies who've done nearly every drug under the sun. Over 600 psychedelic trips and nearly every kind of bender you can possibly imagine have armed us with a universe of knowledge. I'm Yuki, and with my co-host Reggie, we talk about how we do drugs in a responsible, safe, and fun way to improve our lives. Before we dive in, and so we don't get sued, a quick legal disclaimer.
This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. Our goal is to educate and inform others about the realities of substance use in an engaging and entertaining format. We share these experiences so you can learn from them without trying them yourself. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to attempt to recreate anything found in this episode or in any of our other content. We are not confessing to any acts stated in this podcast. The content in this episode should not be treated as factual or real in any way.
With that, we welcome you through our portal and hope you enjoy the show. What's up, hippies? Hope you're having a vibey day today. Today is not just a regular podcast. Today we have a very special guest on the show. We have old dear friend of the pod, Devanan Seraphino on the show. Devanan, thank you so much for joining us today. We are honored to be graced by your presence.
Hey, Yuki-san. Thank you so much for having me on. As always, a pleasure. Yours is my favorite podcast in todo el mundo.
We are honored to hear that. And that means a lot coming from you as well, knowing that you host your own podcast and are very well versed in this world. So it means a lot, man. I'm very grateful for your time. And I'm so excited for our listeners on today's episode because we get an exclusive interview with you to learn about a very unique experience that you recently got to undergo, to learn what would best be explained to people as kind of shaman training in the art of not just psychedelics, but spirituality and guiding people through these journeys. And this is something that I myself have been absolutely fascinated by ever since I got into psychedelics. Several of my friends who approach psychedelics from a little bit more of a cautious angle, they've actually gotten into psychedelics through the guided and the spiritual paths, which is something I have so much respect and admiration for. And frankly, I would love to learn more about. And then I know for a lot of our listeners, psychedelics rank very highly on their lists of their favorite drugs, their most impactful drug-related experiences. And so wanted to kind of open the books and learn more about what you learned in your training and how you went about the process, what you've gotten out of it. So would love to start off with what kind of got you into wanting to do this training in the first place and what made you sign up for this one specifically.
Well, the thing that got me into psychedelics at all in the first place was that divorce I went through last year from that covert narcissist that I was in that relationship with. Once that ended and the whole nervous breakdown ensued, I sought out help with the shamans in Mexico through ayahuasca. I met one of the shaman leaders at that ceremony. Then she and I became like the bestest of friends. And then I hired her for a personal it was three shamans in me ceremony with just psilocybin to help get the devil snatched up out of me. And then she and I just remained friends and remained in contact. And since I've been a healer really all my life, I'm a licensed massage therapist, have been for over 7 years, a licensed hypnotist. I work with all kinds of like voodoo and witchcraft and all kinds of things like that, only under God, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Ghost. I don't fool with any other deities. And so the time came for me to expand like my healing practice. And what I felt like the Holy Ghost was telling me was to incorporate the psychedelics, as they had, God had used them to work for me. So it was time to pay it forward. And so I reached out to the same person I met last year when I was going through all the divorce fuckery. And then she agreed to bring me on. And then her fellow spiritual leader there who specializes in combo and bufo trained me as well. So it was just a matter of me setting up a date and time. I went to spend like a month, 28 days in Guadalajara. to learn how to do psilocybin, bufovirus, and combo.
Wow. Okay. So it sounds like this was a unique experience that was curated strictly between you and this shaman, this figure who you had multiple experiences with before. This wasn't like a class or a group thing that you signed up for. This was one-on-one. You are learning from the horse's mouth directly.
Yeah, we were out in the fields, baby, with the animals and such as we do. And we did a lot with like rapé as well. And so I had like a personal, rapé orders, that I brought back with me. This fan here was made specifically for me with guacamaya eagle feathers, had my own caripe pipe made specifically for me to administer rapé with. And I wanted that specific touch with it because personally I have a thing against group ceremonies. They work they can be effective, but they don't necessarily take the person far enough because you really need that one-on-one touch to really get the true exorcism that you're looking for.
Right.
And I like to give a personal curated experience. Even in my massage therapy and healing practice, I only see people one-on-one. I like a good tailored anything. I like that exclusive behind the scenes, VIP, treatment and everything. And I got to give people what I want. So, or the same thing that would work for me. So it's only fair and balanced for me to do it this way.
Yeah, no. And honestly, it makes so much sense to me that this was the format that you went through with this learning experience, because even having experienced a bit of your thoughtfulness and care personally, not through any of the like traditional modalities, but by letting me stay at your place in the way in which you catered it and walk through all the different kind of like goodies that you had there. Truly, even without you physically being there, I felt your presence and your care and your love through that. And I can only imagine how strongly that precipitates into whether it's your massage therapy, whether it's your psychedelic guidances. That's awesome. And so I think you and all the people who you're going to be able to serve through this gift are blessed that you were able to learn it through such a unique one-on-one experience with someone who clearly you had a very strong connection with in the first place.
Yeah, it was intense. I take my healing. This is the purpose God put me here, was to fix people's motherfucking problems. This is not being done for entertainment. I'm not interested in just like people doing drugs to feel good and to escapism or any type of avoidant things like that, which can be very sneaky in the way that shows up. And even our good friends next to us, we really have to always keep an eye out for that avoidant drug user who is our best friend who might have tripped over into that and we're not paying attention to. But be very careful about that. But the devil did not lay down and just let me go down there and do it. From the day I got there, I met very staunch spiritual opposition, man. The police started pulling me over, walking down the street, trying to ask me about drugs and all these things and just being really petty and nitpicky. I had to deal with the witches in the fucking club trying to like battle me and shit and touch me and fuck with me while I was, because when I go out I'm on LSD, it's more like I'm ministering unto the Lord. I could be doing anywhere from 1,500 to like 2,500 units of LSD at a time.
Wow.
Okay. And when I do that, I'm not there to like play and fuck around with people. I go by myself, and the way that I present and act is super fucking intense, and it gets a lot of people attention. I'm not trying for that. But I had to deal with all of these like negativity from the people at the hostel I was staying with. And what it was that the devil was trying to get me to lower my vibration and sync to these people's level. And I could not do that for that whole 28 days. Cause I went through like basically 2 different rituals a week for that 28 days. So I was eating like peanuts and honey, like you would fast for something like that for that whole damn 28 days. And so I couldn't afford to let my energy sink because I had to go into that ritual every time with my head right. And the Satan was trying to throw me off. And I felt like I had been in a fight at the end of that 28 days. And I thought about it. What would I have expected?
Yeah. I mean, like what that puts your body and your mind through. Wow. Like most people who even delve into this will do 1, maybe 2 of these experiences in their lifetime. What you're talking, 2 a week for 4 weeks? That alone is mighty impressive.
Well, I am a Sagittarius sun and a Scorpio ascendant, so bitch is crazy, pretty much. I mean, I believe I'm okay with the fact that I lost my mind after that divorce and all the molestation and the physical abuse and all of that from my past. Yuki, I needed a new mind. I literally told God, we got to get rid of this one. I guess it won't do. It's all beat the fuck up. So I literally intentionally lost my goddamn mind in order to get a better one.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's an opportunity for rebirth. I can see that. So
the interesting thing on that rebirth. So I also became a tarot reader after the divorce. Like I entered into this whole like accelerated spiritual ascension thing, and God granted me all these gifts I had never had before, or he woke them up. And I went from not knowing, never having picked up a tarot card to now having 7 decks and reading for other people in like a year. And I pulled cards from 3 different decks on the morning I was getting ready to go do my initial ceremony. And I don't know if I'm pretty sure you and your listeners know a little something about tarot. These are people. And, the death card came out in all 3 of those spreads that I pulled from all 3 of those decks. And the transformation that spoke of was very intense. And it has followed me back here to New York. It hasn't stopped. So at this point, I pretty much keep the death card just stapled to my forehead everywhere I go, because it's only a moment before shit changes intensely for me, for me again. And I've just gotten used to the impermanence of life.
Yeah, no, that sounds like ascended behavior to me. Like that is understanding the nature of the world to me, that the only constant in the world is change, and things can flip on a dime, and it's good to be ready for it at times and to embrace it.
I feel like the spirit is telling me to encourage your people to use the power that God has put in like the moon, in conjunction intentionally with their psychedelic rituals. Because one of the most powerful things that I did when I was in Guadalajara, since I am a Scorpio ascendant, there was a Scorpio new moon. And what the spirit be telling me to do is to take a certain amount of LSD, to do it at a specific time, like PM. It's always something like that. And to do it and to like kind of like pray over it or meditate over it, I'll do rapé like an hour before I do LSD to help me be more open to it. And you can do the same thing with full moons. We have a full moon in Gemini this Saturday. Me and our girl and another girl are going to go out and tear it up for my birthday, on that, so I feel like the spirit is telling me to tell your people to really, really lean into, to these full moons, because the power of them will be intensifying anyway, because a lot of the outerlying planets are shifting zodiac signs in 2025, and a lot of very strange and uniquely powerful things are happening within astrology. So let's mix this with our psychedelics.
Yeah, absolutely. And so bringing things back to the learning experience that you went through, can you walk me through what the average week looked like, or kind of how the program was structured for you?
That's the interesting thing. Like, we don't do programs. Like we know what we want to do. It's structured, unstructured. We get there, the things are laid out, but it's very free flow. Like I could say something, they could, if I want to get up and do something, I can do something. It's not, they're like, we're very flexible in listening to what the supplicant is saying, needing in that moment. And so, but I would show up, say for the psilocybin one, we've got all the little brightly colored, Mexican little animals and creatures laid out at the front, all the candles going, the cacao, the rapé and all the things, the music. You take the rapé and the cacao and you see what the spirit is saying. Do we need to, do a prayer? Do I need to do push-ups? Do I need to, lay here and meditate? We let the spirit speak, and guide us. For the bufo, it's different. We were out in the field, out in some type of wilderness environment, gonna put maybe kapal incense in the ground, and I would stake like 5 of them all around me, and light them on fire. Pick a particular place in the wilderness that is open, because we were under the new moon at the time, and I wanted to get that energy, and we're doing whatever prayers, and doing the combo, and the bufo is done much in the same way. So the days leading up to it, I'm going to the gym, I'm working out, or going for a walk in El Bosque, like in the park, to keep my energy fresh and clear. There wasn't a lot of going out to the club or anything like that. I probably went out to the club 3 times. I don't drink alcohol at all. One of the greatest things, thank God for it. Thank God my body is completely changed after I let all that foolishness go. So the typical day was a lot of tarot card flipping around that I was doing, a lot of time at the gym. That would be the first thing in the morning, and a lot of time in isolation, doing more rapé once I got back to the room, looking at different spiritual things on my phone. It was just a lot of spiritual reading and knowledge and reading up on tarot and different things like that.
Yeah, I mean, this sounds like near total immersion, which is, I know, is such a powerful tool for, usually people apply it to like learning languages. But in this case, I mean, in a way, you are learning a language. You are learning the language of these substances and the journeys and experiences that they can guide you through, right?
Oh yeah, my head, I felt like a student, but that was the whole purpose. I don't travel for anything other than the purposes of learning. Like anymore. I don't care to do it unless I have a class scheduled or some type of something with a sensei, a maestro, a guru or something like that. I'm not going to travel there. So like in 2026, I'm going to be spending like 6 months in India going there to come back as a Reiki master.
Wow.
And then a couple of years later, I will return to India, then come back as Grand Master Seraphino in like the Reiki. And I'm looking forward to that shit. Don't that sound fucking badass? Grand Master Seraphino.
Yeah, that's fucking awesome. I love that.
Period.
Well, I am looking forward to that. And I'm sure that will be another conversation that I am very excited to hear about. In terms of the, I guess the learning, right? So you went on this journey for yourself so you could learn how to guide other people more effectively through their own. How was that knowledge actually imparted to you? Was it, like we're going to guide you through these journeys and you're going to see and absorb how we do it? How much of it was almost like classroom versus practice on yourself versus practice on other people? How does that kind of shake out?
There was no practice on other people while I was there. I don't know that they would have necessarily done that I don't know if they would have necessarily done this with anybody because I'm the first person who ever asked for like either individual ceremonies or to be taught, or for like a divorce like ceremony. They were flexible to do it, but nobody had ever asked them to do any of these things before because these people don't teach classes. These people like that, these people are just doing what they do. But if, as the saying goes, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So when I came there asking them for instruction, they knew the right thing to do was to give it. But it was more like they were putting me through the ceremony, I would ask questions. Okay, why is this done? Why are we using Kapal? Why are we using this incense? Why this rape? Why this memorabilia, this token up here? Why is it positioned here? Why is it set at the front of the room? Why are we out in this particular field? Does it matter if we're here? We're like we did it before. We're in a riverbed. I was asking questions, like that, kind of like a hands-on thing. Even though the ceremony is being done on me, I was still asking questions as we went along. Right. And I also have their number. So the instruction is like lifetime. So as I'm back here practicing and I have questions, I can be like, oh shit, I didn't ask this. How do I do this or whatever? This happened in this ceremony. What would you make of it? So the instruction is like forever.
Wow. Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I know you're an extremely curious person. So it sounds like, again, this was perfectly catered to you where it's like, ask and your questions shall be answered. Ask and you shall receive. Incredible.
Yeah, and I already did I was able to guide a good friend of mine through an LSD experience. Now, nobody taught me this, but since I pray to God and I study under him directly, above all, I'm a skilled enough mage to understand. I mean, my highest skill set lies in all kinds of healing. I'm very proficient at that in whatever way it flows. I'm very, very good at healing. And so I know how to take anything. I could do it with a MDA or MDMA or ecstasy. It won't work with like cocaine, alcohol and stuff like that because those things are very avoidant in nature and very numbing. So it won't work with that, or like heroin or pills. It won't work with that. But anything that immerses you into your emotions rather than tries to hide them from you, then it can work. And so I was already able to guide a friend of mine when I was in Louisiana the other week through an LSD experience that we started at 9 p.m. and ended at like noon the next day. But it was meant to be the first one because her situation mirrored mine. She was with this narcissistic cheating dude. She left him. She went back. Same thing I did. And then it was all fucked up. And then she had cried those tears, those bitter tears. Like I had cried and thought that I was done crying until I had gone to group ceremonies and had done ayahuasca and all of those potions. But then I thought I was done with it. And then I got to that individual ceremony with the shamans and then the real tears showed up. And the same thing happened with her. And, and she was like, fuck, I thought I had cried all this, but she had some fists to throw and some bitches to cuss out and a few other things and a few tongues to talk in. It is completely different when because when people get in an individual ceremony than when they're in a group ceremony, because subconsciously you're worried about the other people, even if you don't think you are,
Yep.
what they might think, what's going on with them, their energy, the demons they walked into the room, and all of that has an influence on the whole fucking shit. And so when you're by yourself, then you don't have to worry about all that, and you can let your hair loose, rip it out, whatever the fuck you want to do. Subconsciously, you know this, and it makes it's much more profound the way that we are able to cut loose and let God do what he want to do in those ceremonies. Because I was shocked that I had that deep howl, in me. And so was she. But she caught her Holy Ghost and got loose from all of that. And I'm going to be making a call on my podcast, on the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast soon for leaders to be offering individual ceremonies as well as their group ceremonies, and not to overcharge people for the shit either, because it needs to be another option on the table, because people aren't just saying, but there's some people who just will not do group ceremonies because they just said they feel fucked up about it, and I don't blame them. So I've been kind of reading the psychedelic community for filth on my show lately anyway, but my ceremonies don't cost anything. They're completely fucking free.
Wow.
However, the instruction that comes along with it is severe. Like, the person really has to be dedicated to the knowledge.
Right. It's not for anyone. Like, there needs to be that two-way trust, them in you, but also you and them, that they will adhere to the conditions that you lay down, it sounds like.
Well, the purpose, like, everybody who comes to me, like, if it was you, it would be different because I've known you for a minute. Like, everybody else would have to call me Master Seraphino. You would not have to call me Master Seraphino. That's designed to do a certain thing in people's brain.
Right.
They would have to study for 31 days, like certain proverbs and things like that from the Hebrew Bible. And I have to test them to see if they're going to be dedicated to that. But during that, and then we would do like a rapé every 7 days and meet and talk and stuff like that before we administer the main medicine. During that time, the trust is built. Because other than that, you just walk into a ceremony because of whatever you heard of this person, and you don't know the person. Yeah. And that's another thing that creates a subconscious block. But within that month of me, that 31 days of me getting to know this person, all of that is torn down. They can ask me questions about why the fuck I'm even doing this. They could also read my books or go on my website, but if they don't want to do that, then they can ask me directly to get all that fear out of the way. The purpose of that 1 month, 31 days of preparation is so that there is no reluctance. Should be no discomfort, nothing subconscious, nothing conscious, nothing non-conscious, nothing subliminal. So that when they come in there through me and go before the Lord, they can lay all this shit out and be done with it. Because I'm about tangible, quantifiable results, not just feeling good. We got to have a quantifiable pinned before and after. It's the only way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hugely respect that. It's like seeing the results, seeing the output is what we're looking for. And then in terms of the learning experience that you went through, and being someone who already, to me, seems very well-versed, very highly educated in these sorts of matters, was there anything that really surprised you that you learned that maybe went counter to a belief you already had, or something that was just completely unexpected?
I don't think anything really shocks me anymore. Like, in life in general, after that divorce last year and after moving to New York and the gauntlet that was to go through, I still have a soul, but nothing raises my heart rate anymore. I don't have any anxiety. But just for knowledge, it is interesting to me how each ceremony is so different. I don't know that it's shocking, but it's just fascinating. So we might do bufo this time and bury a mixture of incense in the ground as a preparation, but next time we might not do that. It just depends. I guess it's something that impresses me is how it's just flat ass completely different every time we approach it. There is no set, every time we do psilocybin, it will be this. It's not that way. You have to learn all the different things you can use and why they're used, and then let the spirit flow and tell you what to do each time. And no two ceremonies are going to be the same. And I don't think that knowledge really came to me until I was being taught it, because then it was my first time doing some of these things twice. Because I was expecting the leader to bury the incense again when we did the bufo, and he didn't do it this time. And so I was questioning him about that because I had it in my mind, but he was like, no. I was like, okay. So that did shock me to whatever extent I'm capable of being shocked.
Right. And so it sounds like now you essentially have this toolbox, this toolkit of different kind of elements you can add into these ceremonies, and under what circumstances and why to select certain ones, like burying the incense versus not. Would you say that's true, or is it less of a logical, like I'm doing this for a reason X, or is it more of you feel it depending on the person, the context of the ceremony?
It's what the Holy Ghost says at that time. It's like being a ninja with all them different shits and shit tucked under your fucking cloak, and you don't know till you get there what type of enemy you're gonna face, how to fuck they ass up. Like, but you got to be ready to use it all in any type of way. You got to very much be able to think on your feet, because when you're in these ceremonies and guiding them like devils and all of these fell beings, and spirits will show up and try to attack that person because they're vulnerable. And you have to be able to sense an altered presence walk in the room. And you have to be able to shield that person in whatever way you can. It could be some kind of special spray, some kind of special potion, special incense. So you got to recognize what type of devil this is in order to know what to use, in order to keep your friend, your person safe for that long ass time that you're going to be in the ceremony.
Right. Yeah.
So what did surprise me to the extent that I can be was after I led that LSD ceremony, the next day I felt like I had been body punched by these little fists, only like from my pelvis up to like just under my chest, nowhere else. So whatever the things was that came in there trying to attack her were like punching the fuck out of me. But I didn't feel it till like the next day.
Right. And I know we've talked about a few different specific substances that you learned about through this journey and that you have experience with. How do you think that people should approach, ayahuasca versus bufo versus psilocybin? How do you what do you tell your friends or people who you're guiding through? Or how do you decide what kind of makes sense to them? Because I know there's so many options.
I tell them to research it on like the internet or talk to people or whatever if they haven't done it. Because I cannot tell people what to take or how much to take. I can't tell them that. They have to, I could maybe hear what the spirit is saying and lightly make a suggestion, but they've got to accept it in their head and not be psyching themselves out of it being too much or too little. And now if they ask me, I can explain kind of like how it feels, but because the goals are not linear like that. Like a person could use MDMA and have the type of deliverance that another person got on psilocybin, and it could totally switch. So I can't tell, Susie to do psilocybin and get delivered from a divorce because my friend just got delivered from it on LSD. But LSD does not work with me like that. LSD with me is a very celestial conversation in between me and heaven. It's nothing about, like I would not have used it for like a divorce deliverance. So it really I need to talk to them and see. And then they're going to have to pray and then tell me what they think the spirit is telling them. And then we will kind of walk through it from there. And then I'll refine it to be sure. But that's what that 31 days is for. Because they're going to probably be visited with dreams and visions and things like that during that time. They won't have to just make it on their own. God will help them.
Yeah. No. And I'm so glad that you called out that the decision of what to take and how much to take is up to the person, because there's the piece of the acceptance of, I am doing this under my own choice, under my own accord, but also something that we talk a lot about on Modern Day Hippie, the fact that every substance can affect each individual so differently from another person. And it's so hard to grasp that yourself for be able to truly know. So it's tough to put ourselves in the bodies and the minds of other people to even begin to understand how differently something like LSD, like psilocybin, like MDMA might affect them from our own experiences.
True that. You give good guidance on your show, good practical, down to earth drug 101 advice. And I love it because, for the time that you've had the show, you still talk very like anybody could pick it up and listen to any episode and it won't be over their head.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. And then the last question I have for you, and then I'll open it up to you. Anything else you think our listeners should know? For our listeners who may not have someone in their life or know people who have the skill set that you have, how would you say they should go about finding kind of these right people if they're seeking a journey, if they're looking for answers or for healing? And I know this is a broad question and it depends on where they are and what kind of life they lead. But I know this is something that we found where it's, if you're not already plugged into a scene where this is openly talked about, or you're not necessarily in a big city where you're bound to run into people one way or another who have experiences with this, it can be really hard to find this kind of guidance that I think a lot more people out there are seeking than are, have the courage to ask about and to find.
As I said earlier, when the student is ready, the master appears. One half of that coin, it may not be time for them to find somebody yet. And so, but they must keep searching and not get frustrated, because you don't want to come under this sort of power until God is ready for you to come under it. Because this is completely different than like popping half an X tab and going twirl at the club on the weekend, which is totally cool. I'm all about that life. But when you're going to seek a healing, a deliverance, to undo childhood trauma, and things like that, quite specifically, it's a soul surgery that you're looking for. What you're looking for is very, very precise. And you don't want that just from anybody. Like, you have to be sure you're, like you were saying earlier, compatible with that person. It's not a thing to be sought in haste or in like desperation. You want to be persistent about it, but leave it, until the time. And that might be a few months, a few years. And I wouldn't be crestfallen or sad about it. Just, it's not time for you to sync up with the right person yet. Now, how to go about finding it? Your local community, there's somebody probably somewhere in your damn town doing some type of psychedelic. Even if it's just one or two of you in some country ass town or something like that, somebody's got some drugs around that motherfucker. You might have to go into some dark ass internet room, Craigslist, go to the dark web somewhere, or some type of damn where to find them people. But I know it took me a while to find it even here in New York. So, but it's there. You have, whatever you're like, they would know, like whatever their local like websites are is where I would start, and then establish personal connections with people and things like that. But also don't be afraid to travel for it. Like if you know somebody, if you're listening at this and you want to be connected with people in Mexico or here in New York, then just send me an email, over at Devanin at gmail.com or Devanin at sdjpodcast.com. I got people in New York, I have people in Mexico. I have probably people in Austin or in different, maybe Los Angeles or different places. And they might know people who know people if those people don't vibe for you. So you might have to put in some good old Angela Lansbury Murder, She Wrote type of investigative journalism, but enjoy the journey even of finding somebody to lead you through it. But just as a general standard, if you don't mind groups, they do these sort of groups like in Puerto Vallarta, like all the fucking time. Like you can like look up, and that's how I got started. I just looked up. I think the whole 2.5 day thing was like maybe $200 or like $300. They're much cheaper if you go out of the country to do it than to fuck around with the United States. I have a whole ass thing against the monetization of this in the United States, because you want to be careful with that so you don't cut the spirit by overcharging people for these things. But at a basic, literally look up Puerto Vallarta ayahuasca ceremonies and just go from there. And you can go meet people there and just kind of branch out from there. That's exactly how I got to where I am, to starting in Puerto Vallarta.
Yeah. You are a product of that journey, and look where it's gotten you. You've followed. I think it's led you beautifully.
Because it's something, I guess the last thing I can say, since you said that, it's something about getting out of your comfort zone in order to seek this type of healing. We cannot think that everything we need must be in our backyard, because there's something to be said about getting away from the energies and the spirits that you're used to in your city, in your home, because there's a certain beneficial shock value that comes when you're abroad, because you're not subconsciously as comfortable. It does, or it could be in the house down the street or across town. It's something that really, really helps you to not be complacent. I'm not saying you are complacent, but it's just a positive thing. It kind of wakes you up to get out of the ordinary for a little bit. And so I would encourage people to chase the weird, to be weird, to embrace their uniqueness, and to find, these communities, but do not get lost in community, and be sure that you find your individuality within whatever communities you find as you go on this journey.
Beautiful.
That is all.
Well said. Quote that, and how to belong, be an individual, and stand out. Well, Devanin, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for this wonderful exclusive interview. For our listeners, please check out Devanin's podcast. called the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast. We'll link in the description below. Feel free to let us know what you think about the conversation. And last but not least, happy fucking birthday, you beautiful Sagittarius.
Thank you. I'm turning 12. It's going to be so great.
You've been listening to Modern Day Hippie. As you exit the portal, we have just one small ask of you. If you learned something new today, had a laugh, or resurfaced a drug story of your own, we want to hear about it. Drop us a comment on YouTube and show us some love on your favorite podcasting platforms. Internet algorithms really dog on us because of the topics that we discuss, so your support goes even further here than you might think. We'll catch you next week.